Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Something Something with Eric Newman. I'm your host, Eric Newman. This is our second episode today, which I'm really excited about because it tackles a subject that I'm very experienced in. I'm not proud to say, cheating, infidelity, and I really wanted to tackle this. Now, I've been telling my friends a lot about this podcast, people I meet. I said I'm starting a dating psychology podcast. And people have made me aware of this, and I want to just let everybody know I am not in any way a trained psychologist, therapist. I have been in therapy for 6 years. I feel like the work in therapy is really done outside of therapy. Like I meet my therapist who I love. Shout out to Marin. I love her very much. And I will not give you her last name because people will often ask me, oh my God, you love your therapist? They'll see my enthusiasm and passion behind my relationship with my therapist. And they'll be like, oh my God, I need a good therapist. Can you recommend me? I don't want to know that her and I share the same patients or that one of my friends is also going to my therapist. I know technically there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm very selfish that way and very protective. I want my therapist all to myself. Probably an issue we should work on in therapy, but I am not I just want to reinstate, I am not a trained psychologist. I have never gone to school or advanced in any sort of psychological studies. I just try to learn by doing, and that is where the basis of my experience comes from. So choose to take this seriously, not take it seriously, whatever. But these are my strong opinions that I have gathered from nothing else but dating experience. So today, episode 2, we tackle cheating. Very passionate issue for me. I was in an 8-year relationship, that ended during COVID. And I cheated. I got caught. And I want to discuss sort of the psychology and emotional and mental and physical consequences of being unfaithful in a relationship. So from personal experience, when I did it, I was in a relationship with a person who I truly didn't deserve and was a wonderful human being and woman, would have made a great partner, great wife. There really was nothing as far as, her qualities and our chemistry and our sex. There was nothing that I had an issue with. I truly felt fulfilled in the relationship. I did not feel fulfilled as a human being. I was, in my mid-20s when we met. I had just sort of started to kind of find my way in stand-up comedy a little bit, just in the sense that I was getting booked on some cool bar shows. And, I worked, the club I started at on a very, I used to do something called late night, which was before, after the professional show, the younger guys who were sort of just trying to get stage time would go up and perform. And so I was sort of involved in that system and plugged in and was trying to find my way as a stand-up comic in New York, which was, it's a hard thing. And I met this woman who I thought was amazing, and it was the first time I ever truly fell in love, and we got into a very serious relationship. I was always thinking about other women. I was doing that balancing act, which I feel like a lot of people do, where I was, on one hand was just trying to be the best boyfriend possible, and on the other hand was still like in my head about girls I was meeting and just, oh my God, would that be better? Would that make me happier? Would that sort of fill that void that I'm feeling in this relationship? I will say this, the one thing that I learned that I have no real room for flexibility on is that cheating is not worth it. I actually did a joke on stage about a year or two ago that my ex, not this ex, but the ex after, just for the sake of making it really easy for viewership, we will call my 8-year ex-girlfriend my ex, and we will call my girlfriend that I dated after her for a year, who I almost got engaged to, my almost fiance, just to make sort of clear things up in an easy way. So I did a joke after I got out of my relationship with my ex. I did a joke while I was dating my almost fiance that on stage that basically, I try to be as honest as possible now, and it sometimes gets me in trouble. And here's an example of when it did. I said, cheating is definitely not worth it. The problem is it is so close to being worth it. Why does the disparity have to be so small? And then I tagged some examples that by the way, this joke bombed, but I totally understand why. But I think my example was, there is nothing worse than cheating, messing up your marriage, losing your children half the week. That's the worst possible thing. Second worst possible thing, not fucking a really hot cocktail waitress when you have the opportunity. Now, you can imagine why this completely bombed, because women hate me, and the men who they brought to the show have to pretend to hate me, or they're going to ruin their own dates. So, that's the psychology behind that. But I want to get into this bigger issue, which is that the thing I've learned from experiencing it, from doing it, is that cheating is just not worth it. It's not. The thing I've realized, the psychology behind it, is it's not actually about the other person at all. Like, a lot of people who are cheating are often like, their biggest priority is, I got to keep it for my partner. I have to do everything possible to make sure my partner does not find out what I did or what I continue to do. And I want to say that it really has nothing to do with whether they find out or not find out, because even if they never find out, you are absolutely ruining or harming the relationship. I shouldn't say ruining. I think ruining has this sense of catastrophe. I think we can bounce back from things, but you are absolutely harming your relationship in every conceivable way, emotionally, physically, mentally, by being unfaithful. And there is nobody is so good that they can trick their own mind, body, and soul. And so when you agree to be in a relationship where the terms are, we are monogamous, I will only sleep with you, I will only, go to dinner with you, I will only do romantic activities with you, and you choose to step outside of that to do those activities with other people, even if that person that you're dating has no idea, And so what you're doing is like I've said, and this theme is going to come up a lot throughout the podcast, probably in every episode, in one degree or another. But we talked about in the first episode how nothing proves to you how meaningful something is than sacrifice. So like in the last episode, I talked about how being in stand-up for 17 years and sticking with it has shown me how much I love it. It's reinstated that idea of how committed I am to it and how much love I have for it, because at no point through my 17-year journey have I stepped away to make more money, have an easy way to make more money, or move to a different state for a girl that I am excited about. All of those things that have been opportunities that I've turned down have proven to me once again, and continue to prove to me, how much I love stand-up comedy. And so by sacrificing other opportunities with other people while you're in a relationship with someone that you're supposed to love and who is your biggest priority, you are only then reproving that you love them and that they are your first priority, which makes you closer. When you decide to take another girl up on an offer, if you're traveling for business and you're married and you're in a monogamous relationship and you go away for a few days and you decide to fuck some girl that you met at a bar, you have communicated to yourself that your wife is not worth making the sacrifice for to not get a new piece of pussy that's being thrown at you. So, like I said, cheating really only hurts you. And sometimes, even if you're not aware of those things that I just mentioned on a conscious level, you are definitely consciously aware of the hiding and the sneaking around and the lying to your wife about when you're getting back to the hotel. And like at the end of the day, cheating and infidelity are deceit. They are dishonesty. And the more honest you are with your partner, and I'm speaking from someone, again, no psychology degree, but I'm speaking as someone who has been deceitful and dishonest in the past, and I have lived and experienced those repercussions. And they hurt because imagine the amount of stress you have added to your life by just trying to, by lying to your wife, by putting the girl's number in your phone as a guy's name. You know, I did that whole thing before. The tricks that you think are tricks are not tricking you. So at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. Every time you cheat, every time you do something you're not supposed to in a relationship, you are subconsciously pulling away from that person. And you can never have truly a whole, honest, beautiful relationship at its highest and deepest level with someone while you're doing that. I got into a huge debate. And by the way, you know, like I said, I'm very passionate and open about my views. And I realize that now that I've tried to be as honest as possible, I can and sometimes will create enemies or people who have an issue with me or don't like me. And I'm totally okay with that again, another sacrifice. Sometimes, you know, I know a lot of people try to do things to be controversial. I don't. I mean, subconsciously, I'm sure there's part of me that likes it, but on a conscious level, I think I'm willing to sacrifice people liking me to tell what I believe is the truth. And I feel strongly about these things. And I got into a huge debate recently. First of all, you know, I've been at Equinox every day. And you know, I hope at some point I get into good enough physical shape that people actually believe me. But I was in a sauna recently, and I got into a huge debate with two girls sort of about the male and female dynamics and stuff like this. But more recently, I was out with a good friend of mine, Deb, who shout out to Deb. She's a wonderful friend. She's probably my only like close female friend, to be honest. And I went out with her and her friends, and I don't know how it got brought up, but I'm always looking for sort of a way in to talk about these things. And I brought up infidelity, or they said something about someone who cheated. I said, here's the thing that you have to understand. And I think females oftentimes, look, I don't know what it's like being a female. I only am able to witness behavior and operate from a place of responding to that. And women certainly don't know what it's like being a man. But I will say this. We got into a huge fight. And not a fight, but a debate. It was a friendly debate. And I said something along the lines of, when a man and a woman enter into a relationship, they both have to abide by the contract, by the rules that were set in place. And if the rules are monogamy, we are monogamous. We will not flirt. We will not flirting is obviously a very gray area. You know, everybody has a different definition of flirting, but we will not sleep with anybody else. We will not do any physical activity with anyone else. And we will not get emotionally involved in a romantic way with anybody else. And I said, the thing that you have to understand is that although men and women have to abide by the same rules, on average, it is going to be much more difficult for a man, particularly a man with a lot of options, to stay loyal. And they're yelling at me, and they're like, whoa, you're just giving men an out. No, I can fuck whoever I want. I was like, I understand. I have no doubt that as a beautiful woman, which these women were, you have the ability to have sex with many men that night if you wanted to. It's a different discussion. It's not what we're talking about. I am saying that although if I cheat in a relationship or the woman cheats in a relationship, we're both equally responsible for that, and the repercussions should be the same. But as a man, the decision to stay faithful is going to be a harder task on average. These two women that I was talking to kept arguing with me and either didn't want to hear it or weren't understanding the point I was making. Look, feminists can tell me all they want about how men and women are equal and this. We are equal. We are different. We are different beings, okay? Again, I will reinstate this again because in case there's someone out there who's listening and isn't really hearing me, we are both equally responsible, men and women, for staying faithful in a relationship where the contract is to stay faithful. But the man, on average, will work harder to stay faithful. For example, if you're a man who goes to a bar on a business trip and you're dating a woman back home and you have a model, a beautiful model, make it very clear that she will sleep with you that night. If you are in a fulfilling relationship, you will have a harder time turning that down than the woman that you're dating who also feels she is in a fulfilling relationship. Especially if you're a guy who hasn't had that type of attention before. If you are getting hit on by a model for the first time in your life while you're out at a bar and you have a woman that you're very happy with at home, the decision to stay faithful will be a grueling one emotionally. You're going to be like, oh my God, but what if I never get this opportunity again? And she's a model and no woman this level has ever showed me attention like this. And blah, blah, blah. And let's say you just love and she goes in for a kiss. The model goes in for a kiss. And you're like, you kiss back for a minute or two. And then you're like, I can't do this. I got to go. It was very nice to meet you. You'll go back home. And let's say you feel guilty and you talk to your girlfriend about it. And you go, I just have to tell you the story. I was at that business trip. This like perfect 10 model hit on me. She kissed me and I kissed her for a second. And then I realized I was an idiot. What the fuck am I doing? I love you. And I stopped. The woman will actually a lot of the time, get mad at you for even getting that far. Why'd you put yourself in this position? What they don't understand is that it took everything in your fucking being not to fuck this woman. Literally everything. Like it was so I don't believe that a woman who truly is crazy about her guy, and we'll get, this is probably a conversation for a different episode of you know, will have that type of struggle. I think she'll be flattered if Derek Jeter, a professional athlete that she finds attractive, hits on her. But I think if she's happy in her relationship, more than not, she will make the decision pretty easily. Now, if she doesn't really like the guy and she's just sort of in this like safe relationship, which I want to get into in a second too, it might be a different story, but women will often say like, well, I was faithful. Why couldn't he be faithful? Because on average, obviously men cheat more than women. And men, a lot of alpha men and whatever will argue, well, we cheat differently. Men cheat more physically and unemotionally attached, and women cheat emotionally and less physically, or you know, whatever, something along those lines. And fine, there's definitely arguments to be made for that, but I do believe it is not inherently a female struggle to not physically cheat on your partner that you're fulfilled with, to refrain from being unfaithful. I don't believe on average, I say on average because there's always exceptions, on average, I do not believe that is an inherent female struggle. So for a woman to say, well, I was faithful to you, I'm like, great, but that's not what your struggle is. If that's my struggle, it is going to be harder for me to stay faithful than it is for you to stay faithful. And by the way, I am very anti-cheating. I just want to make that clear. This entire time, in case my message is getting lost, I am extremely anti-cheating. I'm more anti-cheating than, honestly, most men I've ever met. And I think that's because I'm very aware of the desire to do so. And I'm trying to confront it and always get better. And in my last relationship, I was faithful. Anyway. So this leads me into my next segment of infidelity when it comes to women. You know, in my last one, I kept saying when a woman is fulfilled, when a woman is fulfilled. You know, I think being fulfilled is a sort of loose term. I think it's hard to know when the cup is full, you know, when there's more to be poured into. But I will say this. I've said many times that I don't believe inherently, on average, being unfaithful is a female struggle. And I feel very strongly about that. I think that women are much better at monogamy. I think they are designed to protect the relationship physically more than men are. I think it just comes down to simple biology of a woman can get pregnant from a sexual encounter, and a man can get a woman pregnant and leave and never see her again. So I think it just comes down to simple biology. But I want to talk about more social issues when it comes to being unfaithful, because, having had the level of dating experience I've had now, I've been, I don't believe I have ever been cheated on. There's no evidence at all that has happened to me. I would not step into a relationship with a woman with anything less than 100% confidence that she would be faithful. If I see any signs of, emotional instability or I've dated women who are emotionally unstable, but they weren't unstable when it comes to fidelity. They made it pretty clear in sort of every conceivable way that they are loyal and faithful partners and would be to me. Like I said, I've been unfaithful in relationships in the past, and I've been involved in many scenarios where with women who are dating someone, whether it's new or whether it's a long-term relationship. I've been involved with women who are engaged, and I've been involved with married women. I'm not proud of this fact, but it is a part of my history and my past that is undeniable. Every single scenario that I have been in where a woman was being unfaithful with me, to whatever degree, whether that means constant messaging and flirting, all the way up to actual physical intimacy, I've been involved. I had a girl one time, we had mutual friends, we met at a party, she had a huge engagement ring on, this guy was clearly loaded, and her and I had sex for like 4 months, and then one day we had sex in their apartment, and afterwards she said, "Hey, I'm going on my bachelorette party this weekend, so this has to stop." And then I've also had sex with women who have been married for 10 years. And I am avoiding those situations at all costs now that I'm sort of aware of how they affect me and impact me emotionally. And they're just fucked up situations to get in. So I do believe I'm an accomplice to what has happened in the past. I take responsibility for that. But every scenario seems to be sort of the same thing. It's, it's a woman who, just from having conversations with her and getting to know her at the level I have, settled. And what do I mean by settled? Well, she settled for a guy that she wasn't that crazy about. She ended up dating somebody who maybe had some good characteristics and some qualities and traits, but didn't sort of ignite that flame inside of her, which I do believe is very pivotal in dating scenarios. So coming back to my point of how I think that men are inherently more unfaithful than women are physically, I think that women oftentimes, when they're out there looking to meet someone, especially if they've been really vulnerable and opened themselves up in the past and have been hurt by someone who is like a bad boy or a player type, I think are much less inclined to put that risk out there the second time. And so they'll say, "I dated that guy, he hurt me. I'm going to go for this guy who will kiss the ground that I walk on and will do everything I say," because ultimately the more vulnerable you are, the more power you give up in a relationship. And by power, I mean the more you have decided that you are willing to risk everything emotionally. That's what I mean by power. I don't mean power in some like egotistical way. I mean power that you are giving up within your control. So the more you're attracted to someone physically, the more you're vulnerable with someone emotionally, the more you are at risk of getting hurt. And I think a woman, particularly who has gone through that scenario, is less likely to do it a second time, meaning that the guy that she's going to meet next or at some point will probably be someone who worships her and who she is going to settle for because it feels safer than the scenario she just put herself in recently or in the past. I look at dating the safe option as a bigger risk than dating the bad boy. And here's why. Because the reason you're avoiding the bad boy is because you feel like he's more likely to cheat on you, hurt you, betray you, which might be the case. You may be right. Dating the guy who is no risk of cheating on you, hurting you, and giving you everything you want, listening to everything you say, not telling you no when no needs to be said, not being disagreeable at all, giving you gifts all the time, anything you want goes. That is the bigger risk, because what that guy will end up doing is eventually making you the unfaithful one. You will be the cheater. Because what's going to happen is you're going to convince yourself that dating this guy is your best option. He will bore the fuck out of you, and eventually you will come across a guy, because you're not going to be at home all the time. You're going to be out socially. You're going to be working. You're going to meet people at events. You're going to meet people at bars and clubs and whatever other places you go to. And you will meet a guy that will ignite that flame like the original guy from your past. And just like any human being on earth, you will be susceptible to it, because what you have at home will be very unfulfilling and boring. There was a great quote that Javier Bardem said in this movie called The Counselor that I really enjoyed, that came out 10, 15 years ago. And Javier looks at this kid that he's mentoring as far as getting women. And he says, listen to me very closely. You could do anything to a woman but bore her. And I thought that was an amazing piece of advice. And I do think it applies. Again, women have different thresholds for these things and different values. And there are truly women out there who would never cheat. I do believe that. But wanting to, having the desire to, meeting another guy at the gym when you're in a 5-year relationship and imagining, what would it be like if we had sex? Oh my God. And entertaining it, and maybe trying to come to the gym a little earlier when he's there, to flirt with him and just get a little attention. To me, that's the end of the relationship for the 5-year guy. It really is. And so I don't think the safe option is very safe. And I also think that the guy who is the safe option may have never gotten a chance with a lot of women, and he met you and he loves you and you gave him a chance and you wanted to date him based on your own personal history. And he's not any less likely to cheat, because at least the player guy has been in a lot of scenarios where he knows how to handle it emotionally. The guy who never has been in that situation may go to a bar for the first time, have some hot girl hit on him, and might be overwhelmed with those desires and just do it. So now all of a sudden you spend 5 years in a relationship with the guy that was safe, and he actually wasn't that safe. I also want to point out how there is a double standard, generally speaking, from a woman's point of view on women cheating and men cheating. Women will often, again, be in that 5-year relationship with that boring guy, who, by the way, might be on paper, a very good boyfriend. He might not be neglectful. He might be very attentive at all times to you. He might be there for you emotionally. We're not talking about a guy who's neglecting you. We're talking about a guy who's been a good partner. Again, you find the guy that ignites that flame, and your excuse or justification for it is, well, he's boring. He hasn't kept me interested enough. Obviously what I'm doing is wrong, but I'm bored. And that's your justification. I want to point out something that I've been thinking about recently a lot, because I was talking to a girl on a date recently about the movie The Notebook, which I love that movie. I'm a big fan of the romance genre in general, and I think The Notebook does it pretty well. The reason I want to talk about The Notebook is, universally it seems to be the movie that women celebrate and consider one of the most romantic movies of all time, and they're in love with Ryan Gosling, and they're in love with Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams' relationship, and it's so romantic and beautiful and magical. And I just want to point out that when you watch The Notebook again and you really take the time to analyze it, Rachel McAdams is dating James Marsden, who she ends up getting engaged to, a very rich, good-looking man. I mean, there's very few men on planet Earth who are as sexy as James Marsden. I mean, I would. I wouldn't, but, if I was gay, I definitely would want to. So Rachel McAdams and James Marsden are engaged. she finds out that Ryan Gosling is building a house for her that he promised years ago when they were romantically involved, shows up, drives, I don't know how long she drives, but shows up to the house, has sex with Ryan Gosling. I don't know if it was the first time she visits the house or the second, but she has sex with Ryan Gosling while she's engaged to James Marsden, and ends up leaving James Marsden for Ryan Gosling, and they live happily ever after. I have never, one time, of all the times I've had conversations with women about The Notebook, have heard them say, yeah, but it was kind of fucked up that she fucked another guy, that she fucked an ex-boyfriend while she was about to get married to James Marsden. Never. It is celebrated as the most romantic movie of all time. And I just want to point out this double standard. Every woman, I haven't started having these debates with women, but I guarantee you that if I started them, every woman would find a justification for it. Oh, I know it was fucked up, but that was the love of her life, and she just didn't feel the same feelings towards James Marsden. And sure, he was rich and great and handsome and a great guy, but she just didn't have that longing the way she did for Ryan Gosling, and there'd always be an excuse. So I just want to point out that was fucked up, Rachel McAdams. Rachel McAdams, if you're watching, what your character did was despicable. Do you understand me? Cheating on a man that you're engaged to with another man. Now, does it make it a little better that Ryan Gosling's character was poor and he was rich? Yeah, I think every guy could get behind that a little bit, but it's still, at a human level was really fucked up. And I also wanted to point out, there's dynamics when it comes to cheating. Infidelity isn't just, oh my God, that person cheated on me. There are so many more factors that go into how upset and how angry and how resentful and how unattracted you are to the person who's doing the cheating. So, for example, this scenario is a little crazy because, you have Ryan Gosling and James Marsden, two of the most handsome men, basically fighting over a woman, which also is why women love it so much, because it's like, oh my God, look at these two of the most handsome men on planet Earth are fighting for this woman. So in their mind is this sort of fantastical element of yeah, oh my God, imagine I was in that scenario with two guys and this guy won. This was the perfect 10 man that I decided to be with over that perfect 10 man. So that sort of adds to the fantasy of it all. But it's hard. The Notebook is a hard example to sort of make my point with here. My next point. I was talking to a girl I was recently seeing about how her ex-boyfriend cheated on her. And 10 times throughout the course of the conversation, she kept saying, and she was so ugly. The girl was so ugly. He cheated on me with this girl that was literally gross. She wouldn't stop talking about how unattractive the woman that the guy cheated on her with was. And I just kept thinking that when a woman gets cheated on, sort of subconsciously, there's two phenomenons that seem to happen. The first phenomenon is the instinctual gut reaction, which is, he cheated on me? Fuck him. Oh my God, this hurts. Oh my God, I'm sad. I trusted him. How could he do this to me? All this shit. And then the immediate second response is, who did he cheat with? Who did this fucker cheat with? And I think what happens is if you look up the girl, because, women will look up the girl immediately. She'll call her friends. If she sees they have one mutual friend on Instagram, she'll call the mutual friend. How do you know this girl? How long have you known this whore? Who is she? Whatever. And so she'll sort of do a deep dive of who the person is. If it ends up being a supermodel, whether the girlfriend chooses to stay in the relationship or not, she will inevitably have some sense of, okay, even though she's upset and really devastated and fucked up over it, there will be some sense of, okay, this is a beautiful woman. I get it. I at least get the intention or the desire to want to have sex with her, because every woman's kind of a lesbian, so she might want to have sex with her a little bit. But if it's some girl who's really overweight and gross and whatever, which is all the things she's going to be saying if that's the case, if she matches that description, she's actually going to be less attracted to her boyfriend. Like the supermodel, no matter how upset she is, she'll have a sense of like, oh, wow, my boyfriend was able to get the supermodel. That's kind of impressive. Even if she stays with him, doesn't stay with him, whatever. Subconsciously, that will be happening. If it's a girl who's really unattractive, actually take it offensive. She'll be offended by it because she'll be like, wait, what? I'm with this guy who's fucking this woman? That's disgusting. Why am I with this guy? It almost like devalues her personally. So that's like another level of being offended and sort of disgusted and grossed out and not wanting to be with him. That's why I sometimes feel really bad for Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, I feel bad for Maria Shriver also because she's the one who got cheated on. Obviously, that's horrible. You know, some story comes out. Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the most successful human beings to ever be on planet Earth. And a story comes out and some story comes to the surface of how he was unfaithful, and all of a sudden, a million pictures come out, you know, of the son that he was hiding from his wife, Maria Shriver, and even worse for him, pictures of the nanny and housekeeper, who I think we can all agree is pretty unfuckable in every level. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, listen, like Arnold gets caught. I'm sure he was telling Maria Shriver, oh my God, I've never done this before. I'm not even going to attempt to do an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression because I can't do impressions at all. It's one thing that really makes me upset about being a stand-up comic. Shout out to Rich Aronovich, by the way, who is incredible in impressions. And I tell him all the time that I fucking hate him for it. Anyway, Maria Shriver finds out through, you know, the press or whatever that Arnold cheated on her with. Now, Maria Shriver's a Kennedy and beautiful and rich and successful and got cheated on with. There's no way in hell I would get a drink with this woman. There's no way in fucking hell. And I am not Arnold Schwarzenegger status, not nearly. I would never look at this woman sexually. I get there's the whole role-playing aspect of that she's in your house all the time and she's your kid's nanny and that she's always available, and there's that whole, oh my God, I see her in a nanny outfit or housekeeping outfit and now I can role-play. I get that, but I'm sorry, this woman is not attractive. So this comes out that he's been unfaithful to Maria Shriver. They obviously have arguments, debates. Who knows what the level of unpleasantness was in that household during the time. But I'm sure Arnold did that whole like classic, you know, male reaction of, oh my God, like it only happened this one time or this is the only woman. Arnold Schwarzenegger has cheated on Maria Shriver with supermodels, with hot actresses, with hot civilians, with hot waitresses, with hotel concierge people. I would be willing to bet, not to call out my literal hero, but I would be willing to bet, I mean, they're divorced anyway now, so who cares? I would be willing to bet that Arnold has had a long history of infidelity with some of the most beautiful women on planet Earth. And this is the woman that he gets exposed for, which is fucking embarrassing, Arnold. Arnold's probably thinking like, you know, to Maria, he's saying like, this is the only time it's ever happened and she's the only one. But in his head, he's probably like, why couldn't have one of those other stories leaked? Why did it have to be him? Because it's embarrassing for the whole family that Arnold Schwarzenegger, a near billionaire, action movie star, philanthropist, ex-politician who has every opportunity in the world, gets caught with this woman. And I'm sure Maria was embarrassed. Would Maria have stayed with him if he got caught with Sidney Crawford? I don't know. I don't know what her threshold is for that type of pain. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't have. But I do know it would not have been nearly as embarrassing for Arnold or the family. Anyway, my point is this. Cheating is never worth it. Be honest with your partner at all costs. I know it's hard. I get it. It was really hard for me for a really long time. And there's even moments and challenging moments in relationships where it still is hard. But ultimately, it is more important to be faithful because cheating not only affects your partner, it affects you, it affects the relationship, and it affects literally everybody around you because they have to keep your secrets. So it's a very selfish act. I hope I'm never unfaithful again. I have sworn to a life of being faithful, and I would really like to stick towards that. Do not get in a relationship with someone if you believe you will cheat on them. And if you hit the point where you're going to cheat or you have a deep, deep, deep burning desire, uncontrollable burning desire not to stay faithful, talk it out. Talk it out with your therapist. When you feel ready, talk it out with your partner. Cheating is not worth it, no matter how close it is to feeling like it is. Thank you for listening to Something Something with Eric Newman. I'm Eric Newman. See you next week for an episode I actually have no idea about. We will figure out the subject of it next week. Thank you one more time to my DP Zoran, to my producer John, to everybody here at the studio, Ali and Ronaldo. I'm Eric Newman from Times Square. See you next week.